Dean Gladstone, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. Excited to be here.
Mate, I'm excited to talk to you. Plenty of topics that you delve deep into in your work, so there's plenty for us to cover. But before we get started, I'll get you to give the guys a 60 to 90-second spiel on your world and what's got you to where you are now.
Yeah, cool. All right. So I was an asthmatic as a kid, ended up in hospital a couple of times, and I was already swimming at this stage. Really struggled at school, had difficulties learning, but always kept swimming. Thought I had to with my asthma. Potentially gave me a career as a lifeguard. I was never going to university or could even spell university at this stage. Loved being a lifeguard, got interested in I was always interested in the breathing and aware of the breathing, but interested in stress, and sort of had a couple of dramatic life events, one where I was almost killed. And that's when I really started to study the nervous system and learn all about it. And even though I was somewhat successful at what I was doing, really found myself struggling with a whole lot of things like gluten and sugar sensitivity and dermatitis and anxiety and depression even. And then, sort of had to build myself up a couple of times. But long story short, best known as a lifeguard from Bondi Rescue. And that's been a fascinating, awesome journey. But really, I'm full-time in the health and wellness industry these days. And I guess, I studied with Wim Hof sort of 5 or 6 years ago and started doing this breathing and ice bath stuff, which seems to be very popular at the moment, especially in my world or what I'm seeing on my Instagram feed.
Right, there's plenty there. And we may even touch on Bondi Rescue at some stage for sure as well, which in itself is quite an interesting story. What is the oxygen advantage and why is it important to all of us?
Yeah, so Patrick McEwen is an Irishman, a great guy, very humble man. He was an asthmatic as a child. He had learning difficulties, and I really connected with his story. And he was a dysfunctional breather through his youth and struggled at school. And then one day he came across an article about breathing slowly, breathing nasally, and maybe breathing a little bit less, which came from the Buteyko method. And it just changed his life. And he ended up changing his whole career path, going over to Russia to study with Konstantin Buteyko, and getting into this breathing world, which in essence is functional breathing. So how humans are breathing 24/7. And I'm sure you've read Breath, the New Science of the Lost Art, and some of your listeners or people listening here may have also touched on it. Brilliant book by James Nestor, and encompasses a lot of Patrick's work really about, and he uses the word human de-evolution, how we're going backwards, which sort of crisscrosses into some of the health coaching stuff I was studying with Paul Chek many years ago. So it's sort of all these worlds colliding, and my own world sort of struggling with learning difficulties at school and just thinking I was dumb when really I probably wasn't doing things as optimally as I could.
I resonate with so much of what you said in terms of your kind of learning difficulties. You also mentioned gluten sensitivity, depression, and I think there are a couple of other topics there that you mentioned. What's the before and after for you of all those things that have shaped you at some stage, and then I'm guessing the positive impacts that's come off the back of breath work and the way that you go about things now?
Good question. As we get older, we learn and grow, right? And sort of, my learning was sort of a blunt force trauma to the face and having my 4 front teeth knocked out. And then from there, I was forced into this hypersensitivity of life. And that was, the worst day of my life, but I had to try and use it as something that I could grow from and something that I could learn from. And so those sensitivities became, for me, a tool to learn. And I could, if I went out to eat and I had something that my body didn't agree with, it would tell me straight away. So I was really in tune with my body from these hypersensitivities from stress. Rescued thousands of people and started to, see this connection of stress that I'm rescuing people and how they lose control of their nervous system, how it's a little bit counterintuitive, and then sort of tie it all together to hopefully make the world a better place.
What for you, if you think about stress and depression and obviously how they impact and filter the way that we see the world, how do you see things differently now, understanding the link between breath and depression, the link between breath and food sensitivities, the link between kind of breath and even performance, which I know you're a finely tuned athlete as well. How do you see those differences?
How do I see that? Well, I sort of see them, a lot of them, as 1%ers, right? Sleeping better, breathing better, maybe drinking filtered water, trying to eat organic or locally sustained food, grass-fed meat. When I first started getting into this stuff, like, people used to look at me with two heads when I used to ask for grass-fed meat. Now they serve it at McDonald's. I was drinking coconuts in Bondi in 2007 and 2008. And like, the guys used to look at me like I had two heads. You can buy coconut water at every second shop in Bondi now. Like, so the world's sort of slowly evolved, like all the milks these days, and people joke about them. But yeah, like and I've come full circle now where I'm actually drinking a little bit of dairy at times to mix it up. But yeah, it's a little bit here and a little bit there. And I guess with, the way I've studied the nervous system, it's looking for the low-hanging fruit, what people are struggling with. And if it's drinking every night and staying up and watching Netflix, then, that's what people need to change. So it's unique for every individual.
What have you noticed about your nervous system? I assume rescuing people out of the water would definitely put you in a at times hypervigilant state and definitely kind of stress you out a bit. But what have you noticed about your nervous system, how it was, maybe 3 to 5 years ago, how it is now, and how your work's impacted it?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so rescuing people wasn't the tough part of the job.
Yeah.
Rescuing people is the fun part.
Yeah.
The helping people is a beautiful part of the job. So a lot of lifeguards, and some of them may not even know this, that's what and trainers, all sorts of people, like to help people. And they feel that that's like giving back, and they feel good for that. The difficult bit of the job is dealing with idiots and, managing staff and expectations and, maybe moving board riders out of an area where, they're just out there trying to have a surf. So that's the more challenging bit. Potentially when things do get crazy and, there is a chance of someone dying, which is a very small percentage of the rescues that we have done. That is stressful, but that is the adrenaline rush. If I could bottle that and sell it, it would be gold.
Yeah.
Bringing someone back to life, there is no better feeling. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to done that so many times. On the flip side, when it doesn't go well, it can really get stuck in your head and play over and over. And yeah, that's a struggle for people that have lost someone and they maybe feel that they could have done something differently.
Yeah. When you think about kind of, I guess, your nervous system and what you referred to before as functional breath, what's the impact of nose breathing versus mouth breathing, which you were very kind to help me out when I started this process not that long ago with the strips, and taken a while for me to retrain my system after 20 years of being a mouth breather. But what's the impact of mouth breathing versus nose breathing?
Yeah, so interesting story, which we'll get to. I believe I came to doing Wim Hof because I was mouth breathing at night. I was feeling really lethargic and flat, had no energy, and then started doing Wim Hof breathing, pumping my body up, jumping in the cold shower, boosting the metabolism, and I was feeling normal again. And if we look back now and, hypothesizing that, potentially this dysfunctional breathing, like the way I treat people's stress, it just builds up. It's cumulative over time. So one night of mouth breathing or mouth breathing when you go for a run is not necessarily so bad. With all our health things, like staying up late one night isn't so bad. We want to build good sleep routines over weeks, months, and years, right? So yeah, this had built up for years, and it was delving into the oxygen advantage, getting that nasal breathing at night, I guess getting better control of my stress and And for me, the breath is the best way to quickly just delve into that nervous system and try and calm it down. Yeah, that was sort of really where it all connected for me, the breath and the Wim Hof and my whole journey, and even seeing people that I rescued, everything that I've done, I see the connection there.
What did that process look like for you in terms of one, realizing that you're a mouth breather, two, becoming a nose breather, and then three, if you were to quantify the change, what do you notice in terms of the way that you move through the world between a mouth breather and nose breather, and maybe even, touching on the kind of sympathetic versus parasympathetic state that, you would find yourself in?
Yeah, great question. So I was loving yoga, and thought I wanted to be a yoga teacher at this stage. I always dabbled with, I was training people through when I was lifeguarding, and then Bondi Rescue got too big and I didn't have time to train people, look after myself and work and do all the promotional work. I was just destroying myself. And the way that I sort of, my health coaching career was, you got to look after yourself food. I was really passionate about organic food and home cooking and all those things. And yeah, when you get busy, your health goes out the window first, it seems. So yeah, I thought I wanted to be a yoga teacher. I did my yoga teacher training in 2016 or 2017, and that was really good for my breath. So the yogis are passionate nasal breathers, and I thought that was, mobility, breath, that was what I love to do. I love to move and feel good. And as a lifeguard, sitting for 4 or 5 hours and then having the flexibility to be able to get up and run breakneck speed into the water to save someone's life really helped as well. So yeah, I was on the bus with yoga, and I talked at the start that I was an asthmatic, and the asthma sort of made me go swimming training or forced me, or it kept me swimming training. It wasn't a bad thing, but the yoga started to give me the regulation of the breath that swimming was from regulated nasal breathing during yoga. So I wasn't as reliant on swimming as I got to sort of mid-20s and late 30s. So I was already sort of half converted. But yeah, just delving into specific nasal breathing exercises and understanding some of the science about the biochemistry, and the fact that I was over breathing and now potentially mouth breathing at night, and then just started to implement some simple techniques like taping my mouth shut at night, saw these huge changes. And I see it time and time again with people that I work with.
What did you notice in terms of the differences? I mean, you say big changes, and I can attest to this, having obviously been practicing this for the last couple of months. But what do you notice as the differences between mouth breathing and nose breathing when it comes to kind of sleep and taping your mouth up? Because if someone hasn't heard of that concept and they're thinking about taping their mouth up, it sounds quite daunting. So what does that whole process look like, and what did you notice for yourself, the difference between the two?
Yeah, so for me, I was chronically lethargic. So that's why I ended up doing Wim Hof every day, because I thought it was the Wim Hof, the pumping myself up. So I was flat, lethargic. I had no energy. I was barely able to train. And the other big one for me is I feel smarter. And people laugh, but I literally feel smarter.
What do you think that is in terms of the science? And I tend to agree with you, actually, in terms of the way my brain functions when I'm having a really good day of nose breathing versus mouth. But what do you believe to be true about the science around that?
Well, the science is clear. If you're nasal breathing at night, you get more deep sleep. And I'm pretty sure it's in deep sleep where we download our memories from the day. But I see sort of nasal breathing as a part of a greater understanding and improving of my health through a multitude of techniques, but it has been a fundamental key, as it is for everyone.
Yeah.
Try go through life without breathing. It doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, you don't get too far.
Yeah, for me, I just literally feel smarter. I feel more aware. I'm clearer. I even look back and wonder what I was doing in life in my sort of 10, 15 years ago, like what I was doing. I was there, but I don't think I was actually involved.
So when you say you weren't involved? What, lacking awareness, lacking presence? Is that kind of what you see as the bigger factors?
Yeah, I don't really know what I was doing and what I was thinking. I think I was just sort of skimming through life on the surface. Fortunate enough to be surrounded by good people who helped me through. And but yeah, I certainly wasn't wasn't living optimally or doing my best. I wasn't doing badly, but I look back now and I'm great. It's a journey, right? And I would have never known without living it, and I wouldn't be in this place without whatever's happened to me. So
what exactly is the oxygen advantage, and why do you think everyone should be taking this more seriously? Which for a lot of people, it probably just seems a simple concept of like breath, but obviously, and I've started to realize over the last couple of months the difference between proper breath and other breathing. But what exactly is that oxygen advantage, and why should we take it probably more seriously than the majority do?
Yeah, I guess it's often referred to as breath retraining, and a lot of us are over breathing, and this happens when we breathe through our mouth. There's three key takeaways that I try and get to people. When we breathe through our mouth, we're not filtering the air that comes into our body, so we're more likely to get sick. We're not engaging the diaphragm. When we engage the diaphragm, that stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest response. So that slightly elevates people's nervous system. And what was the other one? Yeah, less likely to get injured as well, and also performance. There's been studies on and sleep. You basically perform better when you're breathing nasally. So nasal breathing's linked to the diaphragm and our core, and we're less likely to get injured. It's all very much linked. Sorry, I didn't articulate that so well, but it's so simple. But and some people are doing it right, but some people aren't. And it's just a matter of laying people down and connecting them with the body and getting them to understand the biochemistry, which is the one that's often missed.
If someone's looking to start that process, what does that look like? So if you think about that, I think you said it was about 5 years ago that you realized, what does that process look like from a starting point? So obviously we've spoken briefly about taping your mouth up at night, which for those new to that concept, we don't get a big thing of masking tape and wrap it around our face. There's specific tape, which Dean has access to, which I definitely suggest getting in touch with him to organize. But what did that process look like for you? And if you're, helping retrain someone, where do they even begin if they're, undoing years, maybe even decades, which for myself was 2 decades of mouth breathing? Where do you start in retraining yourself?
Mate, I recommend you get a coach. I ended up with a coach who was a guy named Darren McKenzie. I don't know if you know Az.
Yeah, that name rings a bell, yeah.
I ended up finding Paul Chek's book, How to Eat, Move and Be Healthy. And for me, that book was just a game changer. And then I ended up studying, holistic and becoming a holistic health coach under Paul Chek. And he has 6 foundations of health: breathing, nutrition, movement, rhythm, and what did I miss there? Hydration, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think they've shifted them round ever so slightly. And I guess, if you can afford to get a coach, someone that knows what they're doing and guides people through that process. As I said earlier, I like to chat to people and find out, what is the low-hanging fruit that we can go for. And, in some stages, with some of my clients, it's just literally getting them to go to bed an hour or 2 earlier and not watching that 1 or 2 episodes of Netflix every night from 9:30 to 11:30. And, sometimes they go, "Oh, Dean, I took your advice." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, we're going to bed at 9 o'clock and we feel amazing." And it's like, so it's the simple things that can be really powerful.
Breath is obviously becoming a more popular theme, and I guess a topic or a theme that's even more popular than that is ice baths, which is getting plenty of traction, which I've seen some impressive videos from yourself on social media around that. Why would one do that? and what have you found in terms of the impact it's had on your life?
Yeah, so when we teach, and my lovely partner Katie is here. Do you want to come over and say hello, Katie? She's a bit of a fan, bloke. So Katie is a yoga teacher, and my
How
partner,
are you, Katie?
Hi,
my
Blake.
lover. And when we teach a Power of the Breath course, it's very much about understanding stress and the nervous system through breath. And we're able to assess people, teach people to breathe functionally. Then we take them through some superventilation or some Wim Hof style of breathing where we go into the stress response intentionally. But when we get people in the ice bath, we're coming back to that breath retraining that we were talking about earlier and trying to get them to connect to a relaxing breath during a stressful response, which is the ice bath. So yeah, we're very much teaching about stress, aren't we, babe?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of people, you're right, the ice bath is a thing at the moment, and every man and his dog's doing it. And there's some, and we love seeing people try something that they're scared of and, feeling that sense of achievement. But we do often see people that get into an ice bath without having an understanding of what's happening to them when they're in it. And therefore, what we want to teach people is to respond calmly to the stress that your body's put under, so that you can feel as relaxed as you can possibly feel in an uncomfortable situation, because people don't know it's possible until they actually experience it. And when we do see other people, sometimes in ice baths, we see that tension in the body, the gritting their teeth through the whole 2 bloody minutes. And we're saying, well, that's largely pointless, you know, like, because you get the sense of achievement after doing it, but you're not actually able to tell your mind's not able to tell your body that you're okay. And that's the purpose of the ice bath, in addition to all the information.
Yeah, we want to train the right neural pathways. But the other thing we really love, like when we take people into that space and then put them through an ice bath, and quite often they didn't think they could achieve that. They're really passionate or open to natural health remedies. Might be yoga, might be meditation, might be giving up prescription drugs or alcohol, going for a walk, even doing some breathing exercises. We love that people become more open to that after a 3-hour course or spending a couple of hours with us. And we usually get to hug, and sometimes there's tears, and it's a really beautiful experience for us to facilitate.
That's awesome. It's I'm sure anyone who's done it, good to see.
I'm trying to get Dean on your couples course. Make sure you talk about
that. We'll get you involved. I think anyone who's done it can attest to that first 30 seconds being fucking horrific. But if you can overcome that first 30 seconds, and mate, one of the things that I really think is so valuable, aside from everything that you mentioned, is the resilience that's required to get through something like that. And we're in a world that is really built for comfort and convenience, and it requires a conscious choice to put yourself in uncomfortable positions, which very few people do these days. So that in itself is an amazing byproduct of everything that you mentioned when it comes to ice baths.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because people are intentionally choosing to exercise, so they're intentionally choosing that discomfort, and like the saunas have always been popular. So the ice bath is a hormetic stressor, but as is exercise and sauna. So the cold's a unique one. And as you mentioned, we've become pretty comfortable not getting cold in the last 40 to 50 years. And for some people, it's the breathing, but for others, the cold is an absolute game changer. Now, there's some research indicating that some mental health issues may be inflammation of the brain, and the ice baths are super inflammatory. But I see people come to my courses and their depression and anxiety decreases and almost stops. And these people just become these ice bath junkies that they love it. Whereas for me, I sort of suffer through it a little bit. I think of it more like a little bit of fasting. I don't know if you've done a 28 or a 48-hour fast. I don't enjoy that. At the end, I feel amazing. I feel ecstatic. I feel, so good. But during it, people go, oh, it gets easier, it gets easier. I'm like, no, not for me. It's Yeah, it's tough.
Mate, I resonate massively. I don't find ice baths get any easier. And I've done nowhere near as many as you, but like I would have done somewhere between 10 and 15. I don't know. I don't find them getting any easier. So I definitely resonate with that.
Well, when I teach, I demonstrate. So I get in the ice bath and teach from in the ice bath, because I used to tell people what to do and then they'd get in and go, they'd go straight into that accessory respiratory mouth breathing that we don't want. So I get in and teach from in, and they're like, oh, for some people it's, oh my God, and the visual demo, it's a really nice way to teach with a visual demo.
You mentioned before finding yourself in a state of depression, and I don't know exactly where on your timeline that was, but now that you've, from what I can see and what I've observed, appear to have come out the other side of it, what do you see as what might have led you there, and potentially what has changed or what had to change in order for you to be in a much better place now?
Yeah. So I guess, as I mentioned, I was just sort of cruising on through life. I was doing fairly well as an athlete, competing. And then the assault where I was injured and King hit, that sort of, knocked out my full front teeth. One of these is fake. I don't even know which one now. I was hospitalized. I started getting all these problems, and I think it was the straw that broke the camel's back. So I wasn't breastfed as a child. My parents, I love them to death, and this is not a criticism of them, but they were young when, I was 20, mum was 21 when she had me. Like, we grew up eating a very poor westernized diet. I had a lot of bread, I had a lot of fast food. So I see, and even as an athlete, as a swimmer, I had muscle imbalances. So when I was King hit, the force of that and the muscle imbalances created a severe whiplash, and I was sort of slightly kyphotic, and from I'm tall and skinny from all the swimming, it just broke me and destroyed me. So I had to rebuild from the ground up. I had to look at everything. The way I ate, the way I should, everything.
If you break that, how many years ago was the King hit?
That was 2005.
So was that pre
Bondi Rescue? Started 2005, 2006. So that started just after that.
Yeah, gotcha. So it wasn't one of those numpties that is trying to find someone who's got a profile. So what, and I loved the way that you just kind of spoke to depression in terms of it not being one piece, but a collection of pieces. If you were to summarize that, and obviously this is a 17-year journey, so trying to kind of take yourself back that far might be challenging, but if you were to look at the different pieces, what would you say? So there was obviously breath in there was nutrition. What else do you think influenced, obviously, your body imbalance and correcting that? What else do you think had an impact on that?
So for me, I was really worried that I wasn't able to earn a living going forward. I'm a plumber by trade. At this stage, I'd done a little bit of personal training and I was a lifeguard. So my body wasn't working. So if my body didn't work, I was thinking, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? It's going to be a struggle. So I became obsessed with getting my health back. I'd lost my health. I was obsessed. And everything that went into my mouth, I only wanted to drink filtered water. I was really obsessed with sort of the water and the nutrition at this stage, trying to regain health. That's what I was focused on. And then I sort of found Aaron McKenzie and some of that Czech stuff. And I guess I was eating a paleo diet before paleo became a fad word. But Paul Czech's sort of thing was this. He had some raw milk in there, which was really cool as well, to dabble with a bit of raw milk, because I was dairy free for many years before that. As an asthmatic, I struggled with it. But I became so obsessed with my health and what went into my body that it limited me socially, and it started to cause other stress. And I couldn't go out. I couldn't eat one meal unless I had cooked it, and it was. I was pretty difficult to deal with. I was fortunate enough to have love and support from partners and family to help me get through it. But yeah, this stress and discipline to eat really well was driven by the fact that if I didn't, I would scratch myself till I bled at night. Not intentionally, just, I would dig my toenails into my shin where the dermatitis was, and I'd wake up and there'd be blood and that sort of thing. And my nose would block. So if I had something I was allergic to at night, my left nostril would sort of block straight away. And so that mouth breathing, the whole thing, I was just feeling really, really shit. And I was just so focused on getting my health back so I could continue to be a lifeguard and a personal trainer. Because, at that stage, I never pictured that I could teach or do other things, like I'm doing today.
When you look at your symptoms from, you mentioned the dermatitis, I guess the kind of body imbalances, you mentioned depression. What have you noticed from a change point of view? So if you're speaking to the skin, which obviously is a byproduct of what's happening internally, you're speaking to the mental place. What were your struggles 15 years ago, and what may they be now? Obviously, the last couple of years has been challenging for the majority of people. So, mental health has obviously been impacted massively. I'm not sure how you've kind of navigated the last couple of years, but what do you see as the Dean 10 years ago as opposed to the Dean now?
I'm loving what I'm doing now. Yeah, I don't know. So, what do you mean? What do you mean?
So, I mean, you mentioned dermatitis as an issue that you used to have. You mentioned, mentally you used to kind of struggle potentially. From what I hear, you might have felt misaligned from a career point of view. How do you see, who you were 10 years ago to how you are now, whether that's mental, physical, emotional, and even things like kind of energetic and spiritual, if you're into, I guess, yoga as well?
Yeah, it's a journey, right? I'm grateful for the whole journey. I love my career as a lifeguard, and I feel it sort of led and helped me to where I am today. And when I'm teaching, whether it to be corporates or little group breathwork classes, I quite often include some lifeguard stories. I'm very much passionate about natural health, and all this stuff is trying to live in this modern world in a way where we can live somewhat naturally, or balance out our non-natural living so we can thrive as humans. And a lot of people aren't thriving. And I've mentioned it a couple of times already, and you sort of said something. What I see with people when I work with people that are struggling with their physical and mental health, they're not doing some of the things that we've talked about: the sleep, the nutrition, they're staying up late watching porn, they might be masturbating, they're not masticating, so they're not chewing their food. So it's trying to put all these little things in place for someone and get them up to a stage up here where the people, they are chewing their food. It's good food. They're drinking filtered water. They're sleeping. They're meditating. They're doing some sort of breath work. They're exercising. They're maybe doing gratitude journal. So I see this sort of not quite linear line where people are down here struggling and people up here doing really well, but it's trying to do those same things. And I guess my life is trying to tweak and improve everything. And anything I do, I try and sort of think about the outcomes or who's involved or what it'll mean. The animal products I buy, I like to buy animals that were treated well if I'm going to eat them. And I like not to waste those products. I like chickens that are free range and that are out to peck. And, I'm happy to pay double for my eggs. I like filtered water and sustainable bottles, and I sort of like to keep my imprint on the world as minimal as can be, but whilst supporting myself in the meantime. Does that make sense?
Mate, 100%. And I resonate with all of that, which is awesome. What, with your clients and I guess potentially, people that are reaching out and asking questions and, inquiring through social media, what do you see as, maybe the top 3 or 4 biggest struggles or the most common themes in which people are letting themselves down from a natural health point of view, or just a general kind of lifestyle point of view?
Yeah, well, it all comes across as stress, some sort of stress, stress from not moving, stress from toxic chemicals, stress from work, And it, you know, the models that I've studied, that this all stress is cumulative, and it just goes into one big bucket. And then sometimes people are trying to exercise, which is a stressor, which I mentioned before, and they actually need to chill out and get some balance in the body. So yeah, what I do is get people to understand and influence stress. Breathing, as I mentioned, it's my favorite way to tap into the nervous system. Brilliant for people that can't meditate. Simple, effective, you know, 5 minutes a day is enough to help with some sort of breathing retraining. And then, you know, the way we influence our unconscious breathing is through conscious breathing.
Mate, you've given people plenty to think about, which is unreal. And for me, your overall message has very much been around just kind of slow and steady, which is super important, and no doubt a message that I think most people need to hear, albeit I do, at least in my world, see people just chipping away at improving. It's, you know, it doesn't have to be an overnight thing. And if you try it, it's probably going to kind of fall down. So, you know, as you mentioned, simple things like changing your water to filtered water, you know, changing your mouth breathing to nose breathing, you know, bringing your sleep in an hour in terms of time you go to bed. There's so many little things that you can do. It just chip away at it. And the accumulation effect from all of those is amazing. And to see, you know, you and how you show up, and, you know, the picture of health that you are is obviously testament to that as well. So, Dean, thanks, mate, so much for coming on. If people want to find out more about breath and the work you do, where's the best spot for them to find you?
Yeah, if you Google me, no doubt I'll come up. But Instagram seems to be the sort of way of the world. So I've got a sort of breath and ice sort of page called Power of the Breath.
Awesome.
Google Dean Gladstone and I'll come up, and there'll be a way to reach out if they want. And mate, articulated what I said well, better than me.
Mate, appreciate you coming on.